Hello, good morning. It is Boxing Day today, so we're still in December 2024. And one of the things that I am looking at is a local paper that is known mainly by the boating community called the Towpath. There's also the Telegraph as well, which I don't have a copy of. No. Won't be my video without a yawn. I'm just going to do one thing. Just give me a second. Right. Sorry, I was just turning the fan off, which you could probably hear in the background. Now, anyone who's obviously watched any of my videos over the years is going to know that I used to be a part of the boating community. My oldest two children were actually born on the CANAL network. So what's amazing for them is they've had the opportunity to, on their birth certificates, it actually says the name of the boat that we were living on and the part of the CANAL network that we were living on at the time of their birth. But unfortunately, the CANAL networks in the United Kingdom, they used to be owned by British Waterways. They are now owned by Canal and River Trust. And when we first lived on the canal 10 years ago, it was probably the best time for us to do that as a family. Because unfortunately, over the last 10 years, the way that Canal and River Trust have handled the general maintenance and the upkeep of the canal networks within the United Kingdom has not been great. Now, obviously, things have happened that are unforeseeable, and one of the main things that needs doing in order to keep the canal network open is repairs. And one of the things that keeps happening now, unfortunately, to the boating community is that Canal River Trust keep putting up the boat licensing that you need in order to live on the canal network or even have a boat on the canal network. I don't know whether they've put up any of the other licenses, such as for like canoeing or fishing, but I know they have once again put up the boat license because it is featured in the towpath. And the article basically says that Canal and River Trust increase licence fees to help keep waterways open. And an example of that is the Broad's authority to increase boat fees by 5.9% next year, as fears rise over the state of the waterways. Well, what gets me is how much of the infrastructure of the motorways, A roads, B roads, the amount of potholes there are in the roads in the UK. And yet, as far as I'm aware, road tax hasn't increased. Obviously, I don't drive anymore due to personal reasons. And I keep thinking to myself, well, if road tax hasn't increased, why should people that live on the canal network be penalised the way they are being penalised? By having these, in certain areas, having an increase of 5.9% on to their boat licence. The only thing that is going to end up doing in the long run is basically what we did. We got to the point where Canal and River Trust changed the rules, they changed the guidelines, they made it virtually impossible for me and my family to live on the canal. And the main reason for that is because I can't find it, I keep trying to look for it, but there is a quote somewhere in history that clearly says, "We are not a housing association. We do not want the canal network to be used as a substitute for people who can't afford bricks and mortar. What they want is the canal network to be for pleasure only." Bearing in mind that people forget that any right of way to the canal network is actually private land. It is private property. So when you take your dog for a walk on the canal network, or you go for a jog, or you bike, or you go fishing on the canal, it is actually private property. And the only people who are paying to keep those footpaths, those bridges, the waterways, the whole infrastructure of the canal network open and maintained are the people with boat licenses, or the people that work on the canal network. And even that has become so restricted by Canal and River Trust that people are not even able to make a living on the canal anymore. All of this information can be found on the Canal and River Trust website, and it's worth looking at it if you're interested in this. But it is absolutely disgusting, in my opinion. I went into living on the canal network with rose-tinted glasses, believing this is going to be the best experience of my life. I'm going to be able to live on my boat, I'm going to be able to raise my children, I'm going to be able to moor, I'm going to be able to work, I'm going to be able to do everything I've ever dreamed of and have the opportunity to travel around the whole of the country, not Scotland, obviously, because it's separate, on my canal boat. The moment we got the boat, that dream was shattered. One of my favourite places in Warwickshire, believe it or not, to actually used to be able to moor was Atherstone. And when we first brought the boat, we could literally spend an entire month in Atherstone. And I know a lot of people are thinking, Atherstone, why would you want to spend a whole month in Atherstone? Because it was absolutely an amazing opportunity to not only live on the boat, not have to worry about moving every 24 hours or every 48 hours, which is usually the case with most moorings now. That does change during the winter months. And we would start at the top lock and we'd go shopping, we'd go swimming, we'd use all of the services that this small town had to offer. And then by the time we got to the bottom lock, we could choose to use the co-op, which is now a Tesco's, and then carry on our way. And it was just so peaceful, it was so relaxful. It was, especially when it would be like impractical to move due to high storms, so high winds, rain, or if it was too hot to move. It was just nice to have that relaxing experience of being on the canal network. And all of that basically got ruined and got shattered because of the changes from Canal and River Trust, when it used to be British Waterways and then changed to Canal and River Trust. And no matter how much you, as a boater, try to liaison with Canal and River Trust, you might as well talk to this brick wall behind me, unfortunately. One of the year, what really, really upset not just me, but a lot of the boating community, was they decided in their pearls of wisdom they were going to employ loads of more new managers to help manage and maintain certain sections of the canal network. Each of them was paid £60,000. And yet that year they had the audacity to put up boat licensing fees in order to help pay all of these staff 60 grand. And they're always saying, oh, we've got no money, we can't improve the infrastructure of the canal network. The only way that can be achieved is by selling off our assets. So they're practically asset stripping the canal networks, and by putting up boat licensing fees. Yet when you go to places along the Coventry Canal network where they have put up all these new housing, like multi-storey, like in with what they call canal view. They've done it in Hinckley, they've done it in Coventry, they've done it in Nuneaton, they've probably done it in other places, but they are the 3 places I know for sure that have got what they call a canal view apartment or house. Why have they not said to the construction companies, yeah, sure, if you want a canal view, you've got to pay us for it. And there be something in the terms and conditions of these properties being built that a percentage of money goes to Canal and River Trust. Again, a lot of the marinas, obviously they're privately owned, because they have access onto the canal network. And again, you know, some marinas now, which are owned by big corporate companies like Aquavista, do allow residential mooring. But again, if Canal and River Trust were to work more in partnership with people that lived on the canal network already, to see what they wanted, to see what they needed, instead of closing down facilities that people need. A lot of the places that used to offer water points and service points, that offered shower facilities, rubbish facilities, Alsam, so that you could empty your toilets, have now been boarded up, sold, or removed. And then they wonder why people are fly tipping. I'm not saying you should fly tip. That is no excuse. But I used to love doing the Warwickshire Ring because there were places you could literally moor in Warwickshire and also on the Ashby Canal network that had a shower, that had washing machines. So you, as the boater community, you became a part of that community, whether it was for a day, 2 days, a week, like a weekend, or a month, depending on the rules with mooring. And all of that's been taken away from you. And you're now being told, we want to put your boat licensing up. But what is Canal and River Trust giving us in return? They are giving us limited access to the canal network. They are limiting where the boaters can moor. They are limiting where we can shop. They are limiting where we can trade and how we can trade. They are not maintaining the canal infrastructure so that people can actually use the locks and go from Atherstone Top Lock, for example, all the way down to the bottom. And they are always saying how they are dependent on volunteers. And yet they are not working in partnership or liaisoning with local communities, in my opinion, enough, or local towns, villages, or cities. I myself, even when I came off living on my boat full time, looked at setting up a group in Nuneaton to help support the Coventry Canal Network. And they told me that in order to do that, I needed a minimum of 10 people. And without that, I wasn't allowed. And there are people within the Nuneaton community that I have worked with in the past who are more than happy to volunteer to maintain the canal network and to litter pick and to report faults. But at the same time, the way I look at it is, why should people do that for free when you're paying somebody £60,000 a year to maintain that section of the canal network? When it is their role, it is their responsibility to take care, maintain, and make sure that the canal network within certain areas is navigable so that people can actually move their boat, so that you don't then go and say, oh, we're going to fine you because you've not moved your boat. Well, how can I move my boat if you've decided to pay £60,000 to somebody who, by the time I get to a lock gate, it doesn't work, or because of high winds, because of the water levels increase because of all the rain we've been having, the embankment has collapsed, or a tree has fallen down across the canal and needs removing. And we actually had that happen on our boat. We actually were moored, I forget now where we were moored, and a tree fell down right in front of our boat. Luckily, it didn't go through the boat, it didn't break the boat, it didn't smash into the boat. And I think, if I remember rightly, it took Canal and River Trust almost a week to remove that tree. And until that tree was removed, nobody could use the canal network. And yet they were more than happy to say, oh, we're going to add like an extra, well, this year coming, we're going to add an extra 5.9% to your boat licence. So this is something I am very passionate about still. Unfortunately, I would have loved to have stayed in the canal network. I really, really enjoyed being on it. But because, unfortunately, like I've said, the cost of living on the canal has just become so insane because of all the changes that Canal and River Trust have put in place. It is definitely something that I do want to talk about more this year in 2025 as part of promoting the heart of England and the Midlands, which I want to promote more of in 2025. That is my aim, whilst educating my children as well. It's all good and well, I love going abroad. I used to love going abroad. I've been to Rome, I've been to Pompeii, and I would love my children to have the opportunity to travel through Europe in the future. But at the same time, just like recently, I stayed at Astley Castle, which is in Nuneaton. It's a historical building that Landmark Trust took on. And so many people don't even know what's on their back door step or in their hometown. And I think, living in the heart of England, it does need more promotion. It does need people to be more aware as to what that has to offer. Not just for tourism, but also for employment and how that can improve and increase. There are so many people in my hometown that when you speak to them and you say, where do you work? And they go, London, Manchester, Birmingham, Leicester. And that again is because, this is a separate issue, the Department of Work and Pensions has now clearly stated that anyone who is claiming benefits from the government has to be prepared to travel up to 2 hours in one direction for employment. And when you look at local towns and villages and cities and how many places have closed and become derelict, and you think to yourself, why has that happened? Simple. If I'm having to travel 2 hours for work, why would I shop in my hometown? I'd get my bread, I'd get my milk, I would get my eggs, all my essentials I would get on the way home. And that would be using all of the most convenient and most commonly known retail outlets that you're going to see when you're driving your vehicle home from working in London or Manchester or Lichfield or wherever it is in that 2 hour window that you've got to get back home again. You're not going to say to yourself, oh, I know, I'm going to drive into the town centre of my hometown, like Nuneaton, for example, pay £2 for car parking, and then, oh, maybe go to Asda, which is probably the only place that's going to still be open, when I can do that on the way home anyway. So it is such a shame that everybody now does a lot of online shopping. I myself am guilty for that. But again, it's for convenience. And we've been driven by society to be that way. Because if you're going to be spending 2 hours driving to and from work, it takes the fun out of when you get home, you don't want to do anything else. And it has just become so much more easier now to be more IT driven. And yet, this weekend just gone, I had the opportunity to go to Atherstone. We didn't do the canal. My son was absolutely devastated. He really wanted to go on the canal network. But so much has changed in that town. And I did actually go to a meeting earlier this year. And one of the things I said to them was, you are all here saying that as a community in this town, you have lost footfall. And I said to them, I'm going to be absolutely candid with you. One of the main reasons you've lost footfall in Atherstone is because Canal and River Trust have penalised the boating community and are no longer enabling them to moor for more than 24 hours or 48 hours at certain places along the Atherstone locks. Whereas when I lived on the boat 10 years ago, I'd be here for a month. And it was just so nice to have that experience. Atherstone is not very big. It's literally one street. And, they'd have the market, the farmer's market. All of the shops when I used to go there were full of different people, of different business, small independent companies, all promoting and selling what they had to offer. Now, when I went there this week, just gone, there was probably about 10 shops that were closed in a single row. Literally, you were going open, close, 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 closed, open, close, close, closed, open, close, close. And I just couldn't believe it. I could not believe how much of Atherstone town centre has now ceased to exist. And I know and I believe that if Canal and River Trust worked in partnership with Atherstone Council, with the town, because of where the canal is located and where the main town centre is, that could change. So it's definitely something that I am aiming to work towards. Unfortunately, with Nuneaton, which is where I live, the canal network isn't in the main town centre. That's not necessarily a bad thing. But again, you speak to anyone about Coventry Canal Network, and most boaters will say, "Oh no, you don't moor there. It's not safe." And for 10 years, I've been trying to change that, but unfortunately, like I said, it's like banging my head up a brick wall. So now that people like Toyah Wilcox has got involved in the supporting the canal network. Unfortunately, it's not local to me. It's on the Avon, the River Avon. So again, with Canal and River Trust, it's not just the canal network. It is the rivers as well. So like the River Avon, the Norfolk Broads, etc. So you have the Canal and River Trust, and then you have the Waterways Agency. And so again, what you pay for when you have a license to travel around the waterways of the United Kingdom, you're not always paying Canal and River Trust depending on where you are navigating. But then when you have a license to drive a car and you pay road tax, as far as I'm aware, you pay road tax. You don't pay what you used to do, which is have a toll system as such, unless you go on the motorway, which they have now brought back in for people to pay to say, if you want to get from A to B quicker, you can use this section of the motorway and you pay us to do so. And again, that's one of the reasons why there was tolls along the road system. It was to help maintain the structure and infrastructure of the roads. And again, I understand with living on a narrowboat on the canal network, yes, you should be paying to navigate the canal network. But why should you then as well be footed with the bill so that whole infrastructure of the canal, not just putting your boat in the water, but also maintaining the towpaths, maintaining everything along the canal network, you should foot that bill to do that. When Canal and River Trust are doing nothing but, again, asset stripping and taking away vital services that one needs, such as clean water, so water points, service points for your boat, and LSAM points so that you can actually empty your cassettes on your boat if you don't have a compostable toilet. And obviously fuel. That would be like the government saying, oh, we're going to put up road tax, but we're going to get rid of so many service stations, so you've now got to travel an extra hour in order to get petrol or diesel for your vehicle if you don't have an electric car. People would be in uproar about that, and yet for some reason the canal network, it's still classed as a very hidden, enclosed way of life, and in my opinion, people suffer in silence, and they still unfortunately don't have the same rights. And it's all good while people saying, well, it's a lifestyle change. Well, yes, it is, but at the same time, why should their human rights be violated just because they have chosen to try and live a travelling community, try and live a travelling lifestyle, which 80 years ago, for example, was classed as a normal way of life. So enjoy your Boxing Day. If you have any comments, please feel free to do so, and I will continue to upload information in situ.